we're back with our live continuing coverage of AirVenture 2011 on News Talk 1490 WOSH. This is JT Vogt, and we are broadcasting live from the International Federal Pavilion. I am honored to have with me John Bouton, I believe that's the way you say it?
It's Bouton.
Bouton, who is the author of the book The Lucky Bastard. And if I'm not mistaken, this is about your father, right?
Yes, it is, JT. It's actually, Dad wrote the book in its entirety.
Oh, did he?
And I never had to talk him into writing out his story of his experiences in World War II. However, I did have to talk him into having it published. But I felt that it was really a well-told story, and it was told through so many different, from so many different angles, because he has several, about 13 letters that he wrote home to his parents during the war that are handwritten, scanned in to the book.
Now, he was a B-17 pilot, and the reason that we call the book The Lucky Bastard is because he was lucky enough to survive all 35 missions in order to get rotated home.
Yes, each airman in the 8th Air Force, whether they were an officer or a buck private or a sergeant, once they completed their 35 missions and were free to go home, they received their Lucky Bastard certificate. Each bomb group actually designed and worded their own Lucky Bastard certificate. And on Dad's group, the 390th Bomb Group at Framlingham in England, they list all of the targets in order that they flew over.
Now, have you had a chance to fly in any of the B-17s that are still flying?
I have not ever had an opportunity. My wife will not let me spend $400 to go on one.
Now, wait a second. As the son of, you should be able to get onto this.
Well, I have a feeling that this week the book has been so well received, JT, that I have a feeling that this is going a long way toward changing her mind.
Now, you've been at Author's Corner. Do you have any other scheduled appearances?
I've been at Author's Corner all week.
Okay.
This week. We have been featured author twice up there, and we're so swamped with requests for the book that it goes by, it seems, in 15-20 minutes.
Kind of like these interviews. You know, that the best ones and the worst ones for me are anybody having to do with World War II, because I'm a World War II buff, and next time I look at the clock, it's like, oh, geez, we're done already. You know, so I totally understand what you mean. When you get into something you enjoy, it just flies by. Got to tell you a real quick story that will kind of dovetail on what you're saying, and then kind of get your read from it from your father's perspective. My father was a World War II vet as well, landed on Omaha Beach in the first wave, and when he got his battlefield commission, one of the things they required the new officers to do at that point, that was late 1944, was they had to spend some time with the Air Corps to get an idea of what those guys had to go through in order to better coordinate with the Air Corps. And my dad always said, when he came back, he said that he told those guys, I don't know how you do this. I feel safer on the ground. And those guys in the airplanes would say, we feel safer up here. So, he always said, nope, don't want to do it. And it was a B-17, actually, that he was in. So.
Right. Well, you're exactly right, JT. My dad had an opportunity to see Saving Private Ryan with my sister, and that was exactly his comment. He didn't understand how in the world those guys survived what they did, and he mentions in the book how he was awfully glad that he had a bed to come home to and sleep in at night, and at least a meal.
Well, it seems to me that your dad and my dad are kind of along the same lines, because out of the 44 men in his boat, 4 made it out. And my dad made it through the entire war. So he was, from his own standpoint, a lucky bastard. And he always said that, too. People would call him, with all the decorations he received, call him a hero. And he always said, no, those boys back on the beach are a hero. I'm just a survivor.
That's right.
So, made it through, but...
I was able to go to 5 reunions with Dad before he passed away in '09. And that's what they said to a man, that the real heroes were the ones that didn't make it back.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
You see that in that generation, and I think that's something that's
Definitely.
been lost over time. But, you know, and now how old was your dad when he was flying?
Actually, the picture on the cover of the book, Dad was 23 years old. I think he was barely shaving a couple of times a week at that point.
And the reason I ask that is one of the stories about my dad is that his when he landed on Omaha Beach, his men called him. He was a sergeant. His men called him the old man, and he was the old man. He was 19 years old. So. But he actually tried to get into the Air Corps, but he had a heart arrhythmia, so they said you're perfect for the infantry. But he always had a distinct appreciation for the Air Corps. One of the things, though, and I wanted to ask, because you're going to have to excuse me here, my knowledge should be better about this. What was the bomb group that was involved in San Lo, which was the very first carpet bombing that took place? It wasn't the 390th, I don't think.
I am at a loss right there on that one.
Okay, and the reason I ask is because that was part of the reason for this whole coordination effort, because after that they realized we've got to get our stuff together, or as my friend would say, our poop in a group, because
everybody's got to be on the same page.
Right. When they tried that, they actually ended up bombing their own troops, you know.
Right.
But tell me about now some of the missions your dad flew. You said that besides being attacked by of course German fighter aircraft, some of them were the cutting edge jet aircraft that the Germans actually had coming out. Tell me about some of that.
Well, Dad's first mission was in October 6, 1944. And his final mission was the end of March in 45. But his first mission was over Berlin, which I think was maybe the third time that Berlin had been bombed at that point.
Okay.
So, but they had to fly, the new boys had to fly tail end Charlie, which meant they were the most vulnerable to fighter attack.
Yep.
Berlin, of course, was protected by probably all the flak batteries in Europe, it seemed at the time. But he said his worst mission was always Hamburg, and he ended up flying it 3 times over Hamburg, which is near Berlin.
Why did he refer to that as his worst mission?
Because the flak was so intense and so heavy. The oil refineries.
Well, I was going to say also Hamburg had relatively high industry, right?
Yes, that's right.
So, but by that point in the war, now, at that point we were still flying predominantly daylight missions, correct?
Oh yes.
And so this was part of what made it so difficult for those poor guys, is that they're flying daylight missions, and let's face it, that makes it easier for the enemy too. Correct.
The British were flying nighttime missions, but they weren't flying formation. They would fly over and come back individual planes.
Right.
And they would meet them coming back over the channel as they left to go across the channel in the early morning hours.
Well, again, my guest right now is John Bouton, who is the author. Actually, his father was the author of The Lucky Bastard, but you're the one who got it published. Right. We're going to take a real quick break, John, but I'd like to keep you over that break if I could.
Sure.
We've got to pay a couple of bills, and we'll be right back with our continuing coverage of AirVenture 2011 on News Talk 1490 WOSH. And we're back with our live continuing coverage of AirVenture 2011 on News Talk 1490 WOSH. Back also with John Bouton, the publisher, or the one who got published, I should say, his father's book, The Lucky Bastard, about his father's experiences in a B-17 in World War II. Now, your father's position in the B-17, you mentioned it before, but let's bring it up again. Exactly what did he do?
He was the first pilot. He was the pilot.
So he's the one who had to try to make sure they stayed on course and stayed up until the target area where the bombardier took over, right?
That's correct.
And at that point, as I recall, the technology of the time, the bombardier actually took over flying the aircraft while they were over the target, correct?
Correct, yes. When they reached the IP, I think that was the initial point where they lined up to actually make the bomb run. And that's where the bombardier had the option of taking control as they went over the target.
Now, what kind of damage did, obviously your father had to deal with a lot of things, but what kind of damage did his aircraft take over time?
They were constantly being chewed up by flak, and flak explosions, even if they hit not that far away from the airplane, it could still send pieces of jagged hot metal flying through the plane.
Well, I've got to ask you this, though. Did your father sustain any injuries?
No, he came very close one time. This is a real funny story, but he after they went over the target, he felt blood running down his leg, and so he turned the plane over to his co-pilot and said he had to check his wound. Well, his flying suit had been ripped open from the knee all the way up to the crotch, and so he leaned over and tried to see how badly hit he was. And a piece of flak had gone in at the knee and bruised his knee, but no blood, no Purple Heart.
That's darn lucky, though.
It went all the way up to his crotch before it went into his seat cushion.
Oh, man.
And he dug this piece of flak out, and I still have that. So.
That is,
it's
scary.
His co-pilot, he said, made a lot of jokes about it on the airplane, when they were flying. So
I can just imagine, given where it ended up, the jokes that were going on.
I was very glad that it was a near miss.
Or you wouldn't be here today. Absolutely.
That's right.
Now, you're going to be in Author's Corner the rest of the week yet, or when are you leaving?
Yes, the rest of the day today.
The rest of the day today, yes, because you've got to take off yet tomorrow.
Yes.
But if you want to read this book, again, it's still going to be available at the EAA bookstore. But if you want to get it signed, make sure you stop over there at Author's Corner yet today.
Yes, we have a website also, www.theluckybastardbook.com. And we offer the book for sale on the website as well. And
all of those websites and these interviews, of course, in the next couple of weeks will be available at 1490wosh.com and and computerguy.uniserv.net. We've been talking about that. People can find that stuff. Unfortunately, I've got to take off right now to pay a couple of quick bills, and we'll be back with our live continuing coverage of AirVenture 2011 on News Talk 1490 WOSH.